All right. Happy Thursday. I know for some of you watching this later, when it's recorded, it will no longer be Thursday. But right now we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and it is in fact Thursday. And this is Right on SC and an author interview today with Rebecca Bruff. So hang in there. We're about to get going. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi, Kāsie. I'm good. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Look, I can't believe this is the first time we're meeting. I'm so sad. And when you said you're in Beaufort, I'm like, I ought to just get in the car and drive down there because every time I hear that somebody's there, I'm super jealous. Beaufort's right there on the water, and you're so lucky to be there.
It's amazing. It's the most beautiful place ever. And yeah, come down.
But you said you're not from there. You're from Texas. How did you get to South Carolina?
Oh my goodness. Well, it has been a really fun journey for me and for my husband. We visited Beaufort, the Low Country, in 2013. Just about this time of the year. It was maybe May, but we had a graduation to go to in Chapel Hill, and then we had a few extra days, and we came to the Low Country, which of course I'd read about, Pat Conroy's novels and that sort of thing.
Right.
And my husband, Tom, had actually done some work here, but I'd never been here. I was born in West Texas in Amarillo, where it is dry and brown.
Right.
Has a beauty all of its own, we like to say, but I'd never been here. So we spent a couple of days in Beaufort. And one of the things we did, because we didn't have very much time, was to jump on one of the carriage tours, which was interesting because we usually just walk ourselves around and learn what we can. But we decided to do that. And I was blown away by the layers of history. I mean, deep, 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 deep history here, which is so marvelous and wonderful. But one of the things that we experienced on that carriage tour was a stop in front of the Tabernacle Baptist Church where a bust of Robert Smalls stands. And I heard about him for the first time in my life. I'd never heard the man's name. I'd never heard anything about his story.
Right.
And as the carriage tour went on, we heard a little more. And by the time it finished, I was just captivated by this heroic story of this incredible person about whom I'd never heard anything. And so we got off the tour and went straight to the bookstore. And I said, show me all the books about this man. And there are several, but they had 3, and I bought them, and we flew back to Dallas, and I started reading, and I just, what began as curiosity became sort of intrigue, and then it became kind of obsession.
Right. Because it turns into your first novel, right? So the name of the novel is Trouble the Water.
Exactly. That's what it turned into. And that's why we
moved.
Has
it just come out? Has it just been released? How long?
No, it's almost 2 years old. It's almost 2 years old. We after that first trip, we went back to Texas. I went back to work. And after several years of the story just percolating in me, and the more I read, the more I realized how many gaps there are in the historical record.
Right.
You know, that we just don't know where his last name came from, or who his father was, or how he met the woman that he fell in love with. You know, so many things.
Right.
And after several years, I had this interesting conversation with my husband and said, I feel like I need to either try to write this story. It just feels like it wants to be shared, or I need to let it go. I need to to let go of this ridiculous, crazy obsession with the person and his story. And so we decided to come to Beaufort, and early 2017 we moved, and I dug in really hard to the research, and I didn't do anything else. And by early that next fall, I had a manuscript and had met a wonderful agent, and the book was released in June of 2019. But I will tell you, we did our big sort of launch here in Beaufort on May 13th, which is the anniversary of the day that Smalls liberated himself and the people that he loved. So
That's good. It's a good, meaningful date. So I want to make sure I get this strategy right, because my second book has an entire passage, a whole piece in Barcelona. So if I need to tell my husband we need to move to Barcelona, you're saying this is a strategy I can use. Like, I feel like I have to write about Barcelona. We must move there.
Right. And so now my husband is suggesting other interesting places that must have great stories. But this is home for us. We really love it. And it's funny. People ask me frequently, like, how did you talk your husband into that? And I didn't. He was fully on board. We had already begun thinking about where we might live if we didn't stay in Dallas.
Gotcha.
But people also say, I can't, what a huge risk to move across the country to try to write a book. And it is a bit of a risk, but it's nothing like the risk that Smalls took, to attain his freedom and to liberate the people that he loved. And so, when I think about risk, it was fairly low risk.
Yeah. And
if it didn't work, we would do something else.
To put it into perspective that way, I could see that. That's the beauty. When Jeffrey Blunt and I were talking about the power of literature to give us the opportunity to be empathetic to other people's circumstances. And as you are sort of infected with this Robert Smalls story and starting to understand what that life was like, what that era was like, I mean, you can't help but be changed by that and be excited by it.
Right. It really was life-changing for me. I mean, I learned so much through the research, but also the writing of the story and the challenges of securing a publisher.
Right.
We had of course I knew going into it that a white woman my age writing this story and this time, that I had lots of enormous distances to cross, the race, gender, time, geography, privilege, all of those things. And I knew that there would be really enormous bridges to try to build, to do that well and to honor the story in doing it. And so when my agent began sending it around to publishers, we began getting these lovely rejections. Beautiful story, wonderful writing. No, we're not.
Right.
We're not touching it.
We're not willing to take that risk. Yeah,
Right. High risk again, risk. And then she identified a small press publisher that was real excited about the story and said, "This needs to be told. It's an important story. It needs to happen." And so that's how it happened. But Jeffrey and I have had lots of conversations about the power of story,
right,
to invite readers into the lives and experiences of other people, which is how we experience and cultivate compassion and empathy and understanding and openness.
It's really good work.
The book has really opened some fabulous conversations, really important.
It's worth doing, right? Yes. To get those stories out there and get people talking about it and get people engaged in the conversations that it stirs up. So before Robert Smalls hijacked you on your vacation in Beaufort, what were you doing? I mean, is fiction writing something that came naturally for you, or was that a craft that you had to kind of get used to and get into?
I had to sort of learn it. My training is in education and theology. I'm a Methodist minister.
Are you really?
Training. I'm an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church and have been in that world for several decades. But an awful lot of that was in cross-cultural partnerships and what the church calls mission work. But it was really about cross-cultural relationships and partnering and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I had some great, on the ground experience of life with people whose lives are not like mine. Mm-hmm. And, that's the best learning experience, I think.
Right.
But I'd always kind of dabbled with writing. I always loved it. I remember as a child when we would, in Amarillo, when we would have a snow day, my mom would put up a card table, and my sister and I would draw pictures and write stories and staple them together.
Right.
And I read this, all the time as a child and through high school. But when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really had no idea. I was really interested in the sciences, and I was interested in a lot of things, but it was back in the day when we had to declare a major.
Right.
So I jumped into biology, and the strategy at the time was to be as efficient as possible in school. And so I tested out of all my English classes, but the thing that I loved and the thing that I was good at,
Right.
tested out of everything, and I didn't take a single English class or literature or anything through undergrad. And several years later, when I went to seminary, I was doing some reading, and writing, a lot of writing,
Right.
but it wasn't this exactly. And so when I really, I just felt this deep calling to tell this story. And I actually Googled how to write a book.
Did you really? I love it.
And there are a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
I found great resources in libraries. I found wonderful workshops and tutorials. There's a lot. And
Lord have mercy, there is. The internet is full of other people giving you writing advice, I assure you.
Yeah.
And we're one of them, right? We're the radio show and podcast.
And some of it's great and some of it's less great. But
that's true.
Right.
Did you find support for your writing during the process? Did you have a critique group? Did you have people that you were sharing pages with that were able to give you feedback while you were working on the book?
I had very little of that because I was so intimidated by the process and unsure of myself, really. But I did have I had a couple of really affirming experiences along the way. One of the workshops that I discovered online is the Key West Literary Seminar and Workshops.
Right.
It's a wonderful program. And I learned the first time I sort of bumbled into it, they sell out about 20 minutes after they open up registration and have this great reputation. And so when the next cycle rolled around, I set my alarm and registered right away. But they have these wonderful workshops, and I wanted to take one that was called Fact to Fiction, taking fact and building story around it.
Right.
And but I couldn't afford to make all that work exactly. And so I submitted for a scholarship, and I submitted pages that I'd been working on. And received a scholarship for it.
Oh, that's great.
And so that was sort of the first group of people that I shared very much with, which was, it's vulnerable. That was scary, but it was a great experience, and I learned so much, and that was marvelous. And then after we got to Beaufort, and after I really had most of the manuscript completed, I met another author who had moved here to write, and we created our 2-person critique group and writing group, and my friend Nancy, and she's just given me great feedback all along the way. And then of course when it got to the point of an agent looking at, there was lots of input and support and help.
Well, now you've been fully baptized there in Beaufort. The Pat Conroy Literary Center is aware of you and what you're doing. And our friend Jonathan helped working with you and with other writers there. Of course, the SCWA has a Beaufort chapter, and our friend Stephanie and Vivian was in that chapter, but now Vivian's gone back up to North Carolina, but Stephanie runs that chapter there. So there's a lot of support for writers in Beaufort. I think Pat Conroy left a legacy there of being inspired in Beaufort.
He really did, and the Conroy Center's been a joyful part of this journey for me. It opened right after we moved here. Pat had died the year before, and so the spring of 2017, they were just launching. And I remember attending the very first event. It was a poetry event, and it was just, it was. I felt like I sort of found my new tribe. Nice! It was really, really special. And
We call
Jonathan's
them.
been wonderful. Cassandra's been wonderful. The entire community is really remarkable.
My sister and I joke about having a wedding dress town, right? Like, you know, when you put your wedding dress on, that like, this is the dress for me. I don't know who else tried it on before, but this dress belongs to me. So when you go into that town and you go, I belong here. This is
Yeah.
my wedding dress town, right? And when my daughter was like 5 or 6 years old, I spoke at a Pat Conroy event and I came down for it. And she was with me and she was like, Mom, this is my wedding dress town. I was like, you're 6. You don't get to
When you
pick
know it,
that
you
at
know
age
it.
6. Yeah, that was her. She's like, when you know, you know. This is my place.
Yeah.
And every time I go to Beaufort, she's like, please take me with you. I want to go back to Beaufort. But yeah, I think it's interesting to have that part of your life. Maybe that chapter closes and then the new door opens and it's here I am sort of reborn or seeing myself again in a different way.
Right.
And so do you think of yourself as author, as writer now? I mean, how hard was it to like take that title and go, this is what I am and what I do?
You know, it was a little bit slow. I had written a little book for the denomination that I'm part of, but it was a completely different project and kind of utilitarian in a good way. But I didn't really think of it as authoring a book. And, you know, sort of putting information into a specific form. But through the process of sharing the story, and not just sharing the book, but sharing the man's story and talking about what it's taught me and how important this story is historically for all of us in all kinds of ways. I think that sort of platform has kind of ratified my sense of who I am as a writer, and I can say that now. I'm an author, and I love that. I still participate in the life of the church. There's the Methodist church here, and I am the associate pastor there, and it's part-time. They're really, really gracious about flexibility so that I can run around talking about this book and this man. So I feel like my life has expanded, and what fun at this stage in the game to, to open a new door and experience a new community and find a new way of connecting with people in the world. That's the best.
Yeah. And it really is building a whole new career. I mean, once we start to understand what the craft requires and then all the assignments that go with it. And to your point of all these kinds of things, these interviews to promote the work and that sort of thing. So
the business side of it, I was totally unprepared for. But you know, I love learning. And so we're learning.
What have you done to keep yourself busy during COVID? Have you been working on a new project? I guess that's the first question, is like, what's upcoming? Or have you been promoting this particular project with Zoom and things like that? Have you been staying busy?
A bit of both, and with some other things thrown in. When Trouble the Water was about a month from release, and I still had a lot of creative energy kind of running through my veins, I woke up one day and I had this idea. I don't know if I'd really dreamed it or if it was that fuzzy waking up place, but I was thinking about my grandchildren, and I was thinking about how fun it would be and special to write a book that, you know, kind of for them, sort of to encourage them to be who I know they are in the world, and to help them sort of prepare for the world. They are between 4 and 12 years old now. And so I began playing with a story that just flowed, and it was a lot of fun. And the characters happened to have the names of those children, and it turned into a Christmas story, and it's called Stars of Wonder. So that kept me busy for the next nearly year, I guess. And of course, the Trouble the Water, just until COVID stopped us, I was back and forth to Texas a lot, to some other places, and speaking and sharing the story. And now most of that's virtual, but I'm really hoping we get back to more in-person things.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've been playing with another novel idea. It's just a hot mess right now, so I don't quite know where it will go or when it will find its way into the light. But I'm having a lot of fun with that as well.
Do you think you'll stick with historical fiction? I mean, and did you find the research compelling and the process compelling, or do you think you might, I don't know, is there like a science fiction story bubbling up around there somewhere?
I don't think there's science fiction or fantasy. I don't see it, but when I heard the story about Robert Smalls, I wasn't thinking, goodness, I hope I find a wonderful historical character to do a historical fiction book about.
Right.
I love historical fiction. I love reading it, and I feel like I learn so much that way. I really don't know. Some of what I'm playing with now is it's inspired by some of my high school friends and some of our stories and memories when we get together. Some kind of autobiographical experiences, and I've been around for a while, so I've got lots of great stories. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what the next piece will really turn into.
Well, it's interesting your journey here because frequently that first novel is the thing that preoccupies you, right? Like I can't get rid of this. I've got to, I have to cut myself open and put it on the page. And then sometimes that first novel is not very good. And so we struggle with the find it agent, get it published kind of thing, right? But yours was a tremendous hit, which is fantastic. And so now it's kind of like, no pressure. What's next?
Well, I mean, that's, I've had some conversations like that. Like, if people are, people have really enjoyed this book and really found it meaningful, and, and the reviews have been strong. So I appreciate those people. I don't want to hand them something, then, the next thing that is a disappointment. I want it to honor what they have appreciated in their reading.
Right. Yeah, and to keep them coming back for the next one,
Right.
the one after that, and the one after that, by respecting their choice to follow you. Yeah,
Right.
there does sort of feel like there's that responsibility to our readers, to our audience. Listen, thank you so much for spending time with me, Rebecca. When I invited you to be part of our SDWA writing conversations, so I do want to mention that real quick to our listeners, that if they go to mysdwa.org, they can register for these writing conversations that happen at noon. Yours is not coming up till the end of the summer, so you've got a little bit of time to get to those, but there's 12 of them in a row, and you're part of that summer series, and I want to thank you for being part of that. And I'm excited that you're now part of this literary circle that I know here in South Carolina. So welcome to South Carolina, and the best of luck to you, and let me know if there's ever anything that our show or that I personally can do to support you and support your work. I'm glad to.
Kāsie, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I got to meet you through this.
This will be exciting. We're going to be good friends because we need a place to stay in Beaufort.
I'll have it ready for you. And if it's your wedding dress town, you've got to spend some time here.
It's my daughter's wedding dress town. Someday
right.
I'll tell you all about how San Francisco is mine, and that will never be. Okay. But sometimes certainly we'll meet in person. Thank you so much for your time, Rebecca. I appreciate you.
So my pleasure. Thanks so much.